It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Puris coming to you from Baltimore. Parliamentary elections were held in Iraq on Sunday, May 12th. 169 seats are required for a majority, and with only 45% voter turnout and with 92% of the votes counted, the Independent High Electoral Commission has declared Muqtada al-Sadr's alliance as the winner of the parliamentary elections. On to talk about the Iraqi elections with me is Sabah Al-Nasri. He is professor at the Department of Political Science at York University in Toronto. He is the editor of Arab Revolutions and Beyond, the Middle East and Reverberations in the Americas. Good to have you with us, Sabah.
Hi, Sharmini.
Sabah, this appears to be a surprising new development in Iraq. Muqtada al-Sadr is famous in Iraq, but no one expected him to lead a coalition to victory. Explain what happened.
Right. Well, the most significant thing, I believe, is that the class question, not the security, not Daesh, the class question took center stage in this election. The core issue here is corruption, injustice, and so on. So the Sadrist coalition, Al-Sayroun, which means the March of Revolutionary for Reform, created a non-sectarian or cross-sectarian civil/religious coalition between the Sadrists and the civil currents and the Iraqi Communist Party. This is something new. This should have happened like 10 years ago. We discussed this at the Real News at that time. But now, better late than never. This is the first significant thing about this election. The second thing I would say is that both candidates preferred by the United States and Iran actually lost the election. Al-Maliki of Hizb al-Dawah, the state of law, and the Al-Amiri of the Popular Mobilization Unit with his Al-Badr militia. And the third thing, as you mentioned, Sharmini, this is the lowest turnout since 2005, with 4.5% of the vote. That means more than 55% of the Iraqi people, especially young people, the majority of them young people, they did not vote because they were frustrated. They did not believe in any change. They fed up with the same old faces, with the same corruption and so on. So they did not go, they did not bother of voting. And to their credit, Al-Sayroun of Muqtada al-Sadr, I think this is significant. Muqtada al-Sadr prohibited all the Sadrist politicians who were in parliament before not to participate in this election, and he pushed for young candidates. All of them are young candidates. So all the politicians of the Sadrists, except for one, Majda Tamimi, she stayed because she's well known for anti-corruption politics, and she exposed a lot of corruption in Iraq. She's the only one who stayed on the list, but all others are new faces. So you have now probably a parliament with a lot of young new faces, and I think this is also significant in regard to the previous election.
All right, Sabah, tell us what the makeup of this Sadr's party is. It's a coalition or alliance, as the Iraqis call it. Who is in the alliance, and what does that mean for the political makeup of the country?
Well, first of all, as I said, the alliance was actually built a few years ago. You remember, we had many protest movement in Iraq in 2010, 11, 12, up until 2017. And they occupied the Green Zone and the Iraqi parliament. And this protest movement was carried, it was a spontaneous protest movement carried by young people. And the majority of Iraq are young people. They're carried by young people, but then supported by the Sadrists and the Iraqi Communist Party and other civil movements and independent politicians. So this coalition, Al-Sayroun of Al-Sadr, that won the election now, is the outcome of this social movement/protest movement of the last few years. So since last year, these different forces agreed to have one list and participate on this list, Al-Sayroun, and agreed on non-sectarian civil slash national or nationalist program. That means an independent Iraq, neither dominated by Iran or by the US, nor sectarian or ethno-sectarian divided, but a much more national unified Iraq. And I think this is significant because it appealed to a different segment of the Iraqi societies. And if you look at the biggest, provinces in Iraq, like Basra, Baghdad, Najaf, Kabul, and so on, you will see that al-Sayroun won all these provinces. Even Baghdad, everybody thought that al-Abadi, the incumbent prime minister, would win the election. He didn't. Al-Sayroun won. So I think this reflects the mood of the Iraqi people, of the young Iraqi people, who are non-sectarian and non-religious generally. They aspire to a much more civil, open type of a society and state and the rule of law. And I think the program, maybe the two important points that al-Sayroun, put forward during the election is a systemic anti-corruption policy and exposing those who were involved in corruptions and crimes and so on, and investment in infrastructure and employment in the industrial sector or in the agriculture sector, etc. Because there you have the most unemployed Iraqi population. And I think if, and this is a big if, because as you know, for the first time, there is no one coalition that has the majority of the seats within the parliament. If you look at al-Maliki coalition, the last time they won 92 seats, now only 25 seats in the 5th place. So you have overall fracturing of the parliaments. The biggest one, of course, al-Sayroun of al-Sadr, but they cannot govern alone. They need to make coalition. And I think it is significant that al-Sadr today and yesterday was saying that al-Sayroun, his coalition, is willing to build a coalition with the Sunni and the Kurds and the Abadi, but not with al-Maliki and not with al-Amiri of the popular mobilization units who are close to Iran. So I think this is significant in regards to Iran and to the United States.
All right. Now, we'll park that issue for a moment and talk about al-Sadr himself. Now, he's not going to be able to become prime minister. He didn't run for a seat. How much control can he have over whoever's going to be leader?
Well, he has a big control over his coalition, especially the Sadrists, provided that he sticks to the agreement he had with the civil current of the Communist Party, that he will not ally with sectarian forces in the parliaments. As long as he sticks to that, and I think he will stick to that, he will have an enormous influence on his list within the parliament. And I think he is the one who is going to decide with whom his list will start negotiation on the building of the future government, which means they are very open to the Prime Minister Abadi. He might be able to become in the Prime Minister. The Sadrs don't insist on this post of the Prime Minister because they want their program to be implemented and not so much the position of the Prime Minister. So they are open in this regard. And I think if the Sadrists probably, give the communists and the civil current some executive positions like the labor ministry, culture ministry, etc., this will also introduce a significant change in Iraq at the level of employment and education, because and healthcare, of course, because these are the three sectors that the Iraqi population suffer under since 15 years. That nothing has been done in this regard, and most of the money of reconstruction, investment, etc., were appropriated by few elites and their clientelist network and transferred outside of the country. So that will be a major issue. And I think if they stick to this, they can introduce some reforms that might create a space for future better institution in Iraq.
Sabah, Muqtada al-Sadr is known for his anti-American views, given that he has led 2 uprisings against U.S. troops in 2003. Now, that is interesting, but so is this, which is that Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran has also said that there's absolutely no way that these liberals and communists would be allowed to lead Iraq. Now, yet he won. So what is actually going on, and will he be able to govern Iraq without the influence or the support of Iran and the U.S.?
Right. I don't think there will be an absence of Iran and the U.S. In Iraq. This is not the case. It's true that the Sadrists and the communists, they are very critical vis-a-vis Iran and the United States. And they are critical about how much influence Iran and the United States have in Iraq on the decision-making. And not only the security issues, military issues, but in other regards, economically, culturally, etc. So they are very critical of that. And they want a much more independent Arab national Iraq, much more embedded in the regional environment of Iraq, and not solely, an ally of Iran or the United States. So there's a change here, and that means that Iran, of course, will try to support its ally in Iraq to bring them together and hope that they will be able to secure majority within the parliament and nominate the minister-president, the prime minister, and so on, because Iran is very critical about the Sadrists, and especially the communists. They don't want the communists to come to power in Iraq. And the United States, the same thing. They cannot trust al-Sadr because he, as I said, he resisted the U.S. occupation and presence in Iraq ever since 2003. And of course, they cannot trust the communists. So that means I think what the U.S. would try is to pressure al-Abadi to go in alliance with the Sadrists and so on, and probably secure some sort of presence through al-Abadi and his coalition within this new government. And as long as the Sadrists are capable of excluding Iran close forces in Iraq, I think the U.S. would be happy with that. They cannot hope for much more than that, because if they try to impose their will, they would end up also rejected by these coalitions, just like the Iraqi people rejected the Al-Amiri and Maliki list. So I think it will be a very, very delicate issue, and it's not easy to maneuver through. And I think both Iran and the U.S. will do their best to influence the coalition and the government building within Iraq. And that's why I think the building of Iraqi government and the nomination of the prime minister will take not only weeks, it will take probably a month until we really know who will be the prime minister and what kind of coalition and what is the nature of this cabinet, etc. But one thing for sure, I think, we are witnessing now a political earthquake in Iraq that nobody, and I mean nobody, no media, no think tanks, not Iran or the U.S. Expected these outcomes of the election. I was reading the New York Times a few days ago, and they were predicting that Abadi would win the election, and al-Maliki and al-Amiri and so on. Those 3 lost the election. And so it's interesting how the Iraqi people prove everyone wrong, and that's a good thing.
All right, Sabah al-Nasri, I thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll come back to you when that coalition forms.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.